There are two problems, one of which I was explaining a second ago, which is as soon as your cell starts expressing a foreign protein, your immune system has to think that's a virally infected cell. And there's only one right thing to do with a virally infected cell, and that is destroy it. Okay? If that cell is in your deltoid because they injected this vaccine into your arm and the vaccine stayed where it was supposed to be, then the destruction of that cell in your arm isn't a particularly terrible thing, right? It may give you some weakness, but it's not critical. If, on the other hand, that mRNA has circulated around your body because either they didn't aspirate the syringe when they injected you and they hit a vein, or it has leaked out of the deltoid and found its way into lymph and or the blood circulation system, then it could in principle show up anywhere. And that means it could be absorbed by any cell in your body that will have it, which presumably is almost any cell, because the mechanism that gets the mRNA into the cells is a chemical affinity between the lipid nanoparticles that they coated it in and the lipids on the surface of cells. All of your cells are coated in lipid. So here's the upshot of this half of the problem. Your cells that take up this message and translate it into protein are going to be targeted by your immune system. When they are targeted, they will be destroyed. If that happens in your arm, it's not a big deal. If it happens in your liver, it's probably not a big deal. If it happens in your heart, it's a huge fucking deal. And they didn't put any targeting mechanism on it. There's nothing about this lipid nanoparticle that says, don't invade heart cells, stick to liver and arm or something like that. There is nothing. So they were depending on these things staying local to the injection site, which they should have known they weren't going to do. And as soon as they found out they weren't doing it, they should have halted the program right then and there, because there's no reasonable way that this wasn't going to cause damage to vital organs that you can't afford to have damaged, like, for example, your heart. Right? That was obvious, or should have been. But that's only half the story. The other half of the story is they told us, and you may even remember that at the early stage of the vaccination campaign, they said that the mRNAs were short-lived, so that all of us folks who were upset or concerned by what we were being told about the novelty of this mechanism were overreacting, because the mRNAs were so short-lived that whatever was going to happen, it wasn't going to be much of it. Well, it turned out that they used a trick to stabilize the mRNAs. And the trick is one that they borrowed from nature. It's something called a pseudouridine, which is, so mRNAs are written in a 4-letter code, just like DNA. One of the 4 letters is U for uracil. That's the chemical that is, when we describe it on paper, we write a U, but uracil is one of the 4 chemicals in the alphabet of mRNA. And if you substitute pseudouridine in for a uracil, it makes the mRNA much more stable. Nature does that occasionally. We do not really understand why, where it happens, but there are times when nature wishes to stabilize an mRNA so it is not quickly degraded, and it will do this trick. But the people who made these vaccines stabilized the entire message. They substituted every uracil with a pseudouridine, and they made an incredibly stable molecule. So now you've got 2 problems. One is that you've got an mRNA with no targeting mechanism being taken up by whatever cells it encounters, is circulating around the body. Some of those cells will be heart in the worst case, right? Gets into those heart cells. Those heart cells will translate a protein that will cause the immune system to attack those cells. Those cells will be destroyed. Now you've got a problem that you're not supposed to have, right? Dead tissue in your heart. That's bad, because the heart has an extremely low capacity for repair. Mostly what it does is scar, it does not repair. So, okay, now that cell has been destroyed. The mRNA has been hyperstabilized, and it now spills out of that cell, and it presumably gets picked up by another cell. Maybe that cell is a macrophage, another immune cell. That cell picks it up, it's hyperstabilized. Maybe that immune cell now starts translating this protein and it gets targeted by the immune system. So there are two problems. One, it's not targeted, and two, um, the hyperstabilizing of the mRNA means that this can continue to cascade into pathologies in cells downstream of the initial transfection event in a way that the architects presumably did not intend.